Call or click to get a quote today.
These days, it's fair to ask who really is in charge in this country, because the momentous loss of the constitutional right to abortion, which has led to state abortion bans across the country, came from a ruling by just 5 right-wing justices on the Supreme Court. Last year's decision that Americans have a broad right to carry firearms in public, which puts state restrictions on firearms in jeopardy, also came from the Supreme Court's ultra-conservative majority. And now President Biden is considering a radical move to end the Republican Party's dangerous hostage-taking on the debt limit by perhaps deploying the 14th Amendment, which requires the country to pay its debts, a move that would then almost certainly be challenged at, where else? Our conservative Supreme Court. These days, all roads lead back not to Congress or the president, but to those 9 unelected justices, 3 of them appointed by Donald Trump alone. And now a new study by 4 law professors estimates that Republicans are likely to keep control of the court for another 42 years, until 2065. Unless the court is expanded and rebalanced, which is precisely the goal of a bill that was first introduced in 2021 and that will expand the court to 13 justices. The bill's sponsors, Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts and Congressman Hank Johnson of Georgia, plan to reintroduce that bill tomorrow. And Senator Markey joins me right now. Senator, thanks for coming back on the show. I've been banging this drum for years to expand the court. Just out of interest, though, how did you arrive at expanding the number to 13 justices? Why 13 and not, say, 11 or 15?
Well, the Republicans, Mitch McConnell, Donald Trump, they were able to steal 2 Supreme Court seats, Merrick Garland's seat, and then a week before the election in 2020, just jamming through Amy Coney Barrett. So they stole 2 seats, and with it, they upset the balance on the Supreme Court. So we need to expand by 2 in order to get back to 2 seats, which were stolen, and then 2 more seats in order to restore the balance that had existed on the court. So we really don't have a choice. It is constitutional. There were only 6 Supreme Court justices when the country began. Abe Lincoln actually expanded the court to 10 seats. So it's within the constitutional purview of the United States Congress to determine how many justices sit.
And you're 100% right on the history and on the Constitution, but a common practical argument that many liberals, many of your fellow Democrats make against expanding the court, which is, if we do it, then Republicans will do it back to us when they get power back, and where will it end? What is your response to that very common argument?
Well, the Republicans are the court packers. They did that in 2016. Then they expanded that one more time in 2020. They stole 2 seats. So it's like the bully down the schoolyard. If you let the bully keep stealing your lunch money, nothing's going to stop them in the future. So the only question is, are we going to stand up to the bullies? Are we going to try to restore the balance that did exist before they engaged in this ahistorical thievery of 2 Supreme Court seats? I don't think we have a choice. Otherwise, the bullies will win over and over again. They will never stop.
Yes, and they changed the size of the court whenever they like. They held it at 8. For almost all of 2016 after Scalia died. Senator, you and several Democrats in the Senate and House have called for Clarence Thomas to resign. Justice Thomas, in light of all the revelations around the gifts and lavish vacations he's received from billionaire conservative activist Harlan Crow. Why aren't more Democrats in the House and Senate demanding Thomas step down? I mean, what is stopping the Democratic Party as a whole from saying, this guy's got to go?
Well, I think that Justice Thomas should resign, and I think there's going to be an increasing chorus as each week, month, year goes by. Tomorrow, in fact, on the steps of the Supreme Court, Planned Parenthood is going to come to endorse my bill, as is NARAL, because they can already see the catastrophic consequences of the Dobbs decision in changing abortion rights in our country. So I think there's going to be a growing chorus, and I also believe that if the Supreme Court does not pass its own code of conduct, that the United States Congress will impose a code of conduct on them. I think that increasingly it is clear that we need to lift the standards of this Supreme Court so that they are playing by a set of rules that match what the highest aspirations of our country are for the court.
So just on that, Senator, Chief Justice Roberts declined a request from the Senate Judiciary Committee, controlled by Democrats, to testify about the court's ethics or lack of ethics code. Shouldn't your colleagues on the Judiciary Committee ask Justice Thomas himself to testify? And if he refuses, subpoena him. But can they even do that when Senator Dianne Feinstein still can't really show up and do her job properly, even now, even after returning to D.C.? It seems to be a bit of a shambles on the Democrat-led Senate committee.
Well, I think that Senator Durbin is doing an excellent job with the majority which he has, knowing that Senator Feinstein has been away. And I think he is putting together a very good strategy that is building the chorus towards a code of ethics being adopted by the Supreme Court, or ultimately having the United States House and Senate have to do it for them. So I think Dick Durbin's doing a very good job, and as each day goes by, as each new atrocity emanates from this Supreme Court, I think that there's going to be a consensus that action has to be taken.
And yet Senator Dick Durbin has not called for Thomas to resign as you have, has not called for Thomas to testify. And recently he said history will judge the Roberts Court. It's not history's job to judge. It's Senate Democrats' job to hold the Supreme Court accountable.
Well, it's why I'm introducing tomorrow with Congressman Hank Johnson, with 60 House members, with senators, the Judiciary Act of 2023 to expand the Supreme Court. We need to take action. We need to repeal the filibuster. We need to expand the Supreme Court. We have to deal with this constitutional crisis that has been created by the Republican usurpation of the Supreme Court. And that's going to be the challenge of this time. And we can't agonize. We have to organize. And I do believe that the momentum is growing. And the revelations about Justice Thomas, the Dobbs decision, the Bruen decision in terms of concealed carry, the decision on the environment, other decisions that we're about to make about democracy, they're all building a crescendo, which in my opinion is going to point towards the passage of the Judiciary Act of 2023.
I hope you're right. I'm glad you're introducing your bill. I hope the president gets on board because he's been very anti-court expansion. I hope you get through to him, Senator. Ed Markey, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Happy to have you here. Happy Monday.